Hey everybody, it's Tim from Phantom History and the Phantom History House Bed and Breakfast, and we're talking books today. Specifically, we're talking The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I just read this and was so knocked out by it that I was like, I want to talk about this. And then I was remembering like, oh, we have all these like ringers of horror authors and really smart people that know all about this stuff. So I reached out to you. Doug Ford is here. Doug, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much for talking to your Horror Writers Association group and getting a couple of those to be with us today.
Absolutely. We wouldn't miss it, as Elaine said a minute ago, anything for Shirley Jackson.
Yeah, I love that. So Elaine Pascale is here. How are you, Elaine?
I am well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're here. And Christina Persaud is here also. Christina, how are you?
I'm doing so well, thank you. How are you?
I'm great. So I'm so excited to jump right in, asking all my questions and talking about stuff. But first, I do want to sort of set this up a little bit. Just let everybody know briefly who you are. Doug, I'll let you go first. Just sort of the really short bio so people sort of know what your connection is to Shirley Jackson books,
Okay.
all that stuff.
So, horror. If you write horror today, you may as well just call Shirley Jackson mom, because I think she's like everybody's mom in a way, because she really is the architect, to use a house term, the architect of modern horror. I write. I'm a novelist and short story writer. I've written The Beasts of Visaria County and The Trick, which you and I have talked about, and I'm very much influenced by Shirley Jackson. The title story of my short story collection, The Infection Party, is an homage to The Lottery. So I'm down for The Haunting of Hill House, man.
I love it. Okay, great. All right, so Elaine, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, I also am a horror writer, but in addition to being a horror writer, I have taught Gothic literature at the college level for many, many, many years. So Shirley Jackson is not a new person to me. I am a big fan of hers. I do love The Haunting of Hill House. I really love We Have Always Lived in the Castle. So Tim, if you have not read that one.
That was actually one of my questions, was what's the next one? So all right.
We Have Always Lived in the Castle. The narrator is so charming. It's an amazing piece of literature. But yeah, and if anyone's watching this, you can see my name. You can look me up on Amazon and see what types of things I write.
Very cool. All right, Christina.
Yes, hi. So I love Shirley Jackson along with everyone else here. And I agree, Elaine, with We Have Always Lived in the Castle, one of my favorites. There's actually an adaptation on Netflix that is really good as far as following the story in a very authentic way. But Haunting of Hill House, I adore this story. I love horror literature as a whole. And yes, she is the grandmother of horror literature, and just that wonderful haunted house atmosphere, which is, what the book is so much about. And I just love the way that she dives into characters and how she fleshes them out. And I just adore this book. So I'm really happy to be here. And so I also write horror as well, short stories. And I'm currently shopping around for representation for my debut novel. So just seeing how that goes and seeing what's on the horizon. And if anyone wants to check me out, I am on online, ChristinaPersaud.com. Also articlesofhorror.com, which is a horror blog where I like to just kind of, just speak my mind about anything horror.
I love it. Well, I feel like I should make sure that everybody that might be watching this, or even you guys that I'm talking to today, like I am new to reading this genre. Okay. I'm like a big scaredy cat. I'm new. I'm not one of these people that goes to horror movies, but I'm like turning a page, I think, in like adding this whole new world to my world of reading. It can't all be Dickens all the time. I know. So that's who I am. But I've really enjoyed this. Doug, I loved reading your book. I've read some Stephen King now. We're doing a book club here at the Phantom History House. We're reading some short stories, and that's where I read my first Shirley Jackson. We read 2 different short stories, and I thought they were really good. And I was like, this is interesting. I want to read one. So I got the book and read Haunting of Hill House. And I have to tell you, like, I'll just start and just say, like, I just loved it from the very beginning. My husband, Steve, had read it and he got very frustrated about how long it took her to get somewhere. But see, since I'm like somebody that loves Dickens, I'm all about the descriptions and that whole drive that she took. Steve kept complaining about the oleanders, and I was like, that was the coolest thing. Like the way we got into her head, I just immediately was sucked right in.
The book will do it too. And by the way, Dickens wrote some really good horror, by the way. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Good point.
Yeah. I think the novel has one of the most famous opening lines ever. And it's like, it's one of those perfect sentences, like the opening sentence to the Fall of the House of Usher, which people quote all the time. But it's often quoted. And it's just the whole paragraph, in fact, no live organism can continue for long to exist sanely under conditions of absolute reality. Even larks and katydids are supposed by some to dream. Hill House, not sane, stood by itself against its hills, holding darkness within. It had stood so for 80 years. It might stand for 80 more. I mean, I love that not sane. And the way she writes that, it's beautiful. And I mean, a lesser writer would have done something really awkward with that. But you are convinced of that opening paragraph that this house is crazy and it's dangerously crazy.
And then that she bookends with those same lines at the end is just so beautiful. What always strikes me is that the title is The Haunting of Hill House, not Haunted Hill House.
Mm-hmm.
So I always come in it with this lens of the house itself isn't haunted. The house is being haunted. And by whom? And I have an idea of whom.
Ooh, I want to hear that.
Me too.
I read The Haunting of Hill House in the same way that I read The Yellow Wallpaper, and that we have someone who is really under distress. Eleanor is depressed.
Mm-hmm.
She has anxiety. She has slight paranoia. And she lives this world of strange duality where she's sad that her mother, like she feels guilty that her mother died, but she also feels guilty that she doesn't feel guilty that she didn't wake up. What happened if I woke up? What happened if I didn't wake up? What happened if I wanted to wake up but didn't want to wake up? I want these people to accept me, but I also want to be by myself. I want to live in a house with a lot of dinner parties, but I want to live in a cottage where no one can find me. She's constantly doing this. Are they talking about me? I don't want them to talk about me. Are they talking about me? I want them to talk about me. That she's always in, and even her ending is this, I'm doing this. Why am I doing this?
Right.
Yeah. Which I think is normal for the state of mind she was in. But like, she's just constantly in this weird between worlds.
She's just like the perfect unreliable narrator, because, and I kind of feel sorry for her. I don't find her annoying or anything like that. I feel sorry for her because I see her as someone who is kind of stunted in life experiences because she was taking care of her mother for so long and she felt trapped in that situation. Even the ending, the way her mother passed away, and she's like, should we say there spoilers? There's going to be spoilers galore. And then
that's we're saying that. Yeah, we're going to be talking about the book now forthrightly, everybody. We've been pretty good so far. So if you haven't read it, maybe, thank you, Christina.
And just the way that her mother passed away, she's like, well, she confesses that I heard her screaming, but I didn't go. Or like, maybe I fell back asleep, or maybe I heard her, maybe I did. I don't know. But like, it was very wishy-washy. And there's a lot of guilt there. But I find that I feel pity for her because she's now somebody who is now like, I earned this. Like, I earned all these experiences that I wasn't able to get to before. So she is somebody who is just like childlike in her, I want to go out and live my life now. And she, in a way, because of that, just blows up such small experiences into larger things. And she has this imagination, and she's looking through everything through rose-colored glasses and second guessing. she doesn't have both feet in the real world for sure.
Yeah, I just thought of something when you pointed out the detail about her mother. It's like when the sisters are, the sisters have the fight over the occupation, the house, and the backstory. There's a little detail, and it's been a while since I've read this book, so some of my memory of the finer details is a little poor. But isn't there something about how the older sister who lived in the house had a companion, and we all know what that's code for, had a companion, and when I think it's the sister dies, the companion, and hopefully I don't have it the other way around, the companion just kind of stays in the house and leaves the sister upstairs. It's just that sense of neglect and sense of detachment that's kind of mirrored in Eleanor and her mother in a way.
Yeah,
And
I
Eleanor
think
and her sister, where they just kind of, once the mother dies, they put Eleanor in the baby's room.
Yeah,
Like,
she's been infantilized.
yeah, and then you have the stark contrast of the sister who's able to be free and live this full life where she has, her partner, and she's got this whole life that feels full, whereas Eleanor is just grasping for one little thing, like, let me just have a little, the car's 50-50, just let me take the car for a little bit. Like, she just wants a little bit of freedom.
And let me have a cup of stars. That always kills me.
Yes. Absolutely.
It always kills me that she wants that cup of stars.
Yeah. Tim, are we ruining the book in any way yet?
No. I'm loving it. I'm just so excited to have, like, you guys know so much about this, and you're so in this world. I'm just thrilled to get to have this conversation. Thank you for making this happen. So, I feel like my comments are all like on such a base level, but I think that's probably okay. Like, that's who I'm playing today, everybody. Like, I'm that guy that's new to this genre and read this book and is like, wow. So I have to tell you, I don't want to detour, but I found the book really scary.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I was contrasting. Steve, my husband, read it first, and he was like, it was a good book, but like, he's seen so many horror movies, I think he knows all the tropes that came from this. But like, to me, a lot of them were kind of new. Like, to me, I have to tell you, the scariest thing to me was that the doors kept closing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, such a simple thing, but like every time they would open up and then would come back in, they'd be closed. Like, that really freaked me out.
Yeah. The doors don't stay open. And it's just like, it is, the house is like an extension of Eleanor in a way, even though she doesn't live there until the end, then she's living there. And I love what Elaine said about the title. I hadn't thought about it that way. It's almost like that's the ending. The house, Eleanor is going to be haunting the house now.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the architecture of the house, how it's like everything's off. That's what creeps me out. So like, you think, oh, I'm going to open this door and be in the dining room. No, I'm not, because it doesn't match up. I mean, just imagine being in that kind of an environment where everything's kind of like a trope, like your eyes are messed up all the time.
And Shirley Jackson, she wrote in the book that the house was like, I forgot the exact phrasing, but it resembled the Winchester. Right. Because of that awkward building style. It's like, the angles are just a little bit off, and it just leaves you feeling a little bit like, unsettled. And I just, going off on a little bit of a tangent, but I love haunted houses when they feel that way. And I feel like it's very similar to Stephen King's The Shining, where like the house itself is a character, and they trap you, they hold you. So you have like the Shining, and there was something else, but yeah, and the Winchester, the architecture.
Stephen King lifted a lot of this book when he wrote the teleplay for Rose Red. You cannot watch Rose Red and not think of Hill House. And I think Rose Red, if I'm not mistaken, was very much like he took the Winchester house and he kind of merged it with these tropes that Shirley Jackson used. There's even the stones in Rose Red. Eleanor's scary. The more you think about it, Eleanor, she is she is such a sympathetic character. I agree with you, Christina. She's sympathetic. She all that loneliness and aching for, the journey's end with lovers meeting, she's just craving something outside that life. And it's just like, the door's closing. That's been her.
Mm-hmm.
Confined. The house confines you. It traps you. But she wants to be trapped in that house. She wants to be in there.
Maybe it's all she knows.
Yeah.
Like she craves the freedom, but that's something that I would just assume if somebody has spent a huge chunk of their life being trapped, how do you live outside of that when it's time? It's almost like something you need to learn. I don't know.
And she even says she has nowhere to go when Theo's like, you just go where you're not invited. She's like, because I don't have anywhere. And I think going back to what Doug and Christina both saying about Eleanor being such a sympathetic character, and I'm not trying to jump topic, but I am going to be on a podcast where we discuss Shirley Jackson from the film adaptation perspective. I find Shirley Jackson does such a great job with that internal monologue with the characters that really helps to flesh, Eleanor, even though she's unreliable, you can still put your finger on her. You know her. And I find that that's hard to capture with an actress or in a film. That's sort of like just what's going on in her brain and in her mind.
Yeah.
Who played her in the film, the Robert Wise film? I'm just having that moment where I can't think of the name.
Is that the latest version of the?
No, the black and white version.
Oh.
That's the good version, right? That's the good one.
Yeah, that's the good one. Although I think Mike Flanagan's version is good too.
I liked it. I liked it
as well.
But I will. I'll have it. Talk amongst yourselves. I'll have this.
I know you're looking. Well, let me say this though. Is it like you guys? You're making the point that I reacted to as well. Is like I felt like I completely understood who she was. Like it was laid out in such a way that I was like, well, of course she's acting like that. Like none of it seemed shocking to me, and I did not find her annoying. I found her very sympathetic, and I was like, well, it makes perfect sense. The way she set it up so smartly makes perfect sense. That like she's sitting there going, oh, I hope they're talking about, she's hoping they're talking about, are they talking about being in the next room? Like, because I was like, well, that's never happened to her. So it's very adolescent, sort of learning all this stuff. And that's what makes her such a great foil for these things that happen through her and to her.
And it makes her so vulnerable to the house, which is so powerful.
Yeah, because she doesn't know better, I guess. Like
It was Julie Harris I was trying to think of before. And I didn't realize that Russ Tamblyn played Luke. I forgot about that. It is such a great adaptation. Mm-hmm. It's just that scene with the door, just pushing against that door. It's one of the creepiest moments ever. So
what did y'all think of the doctor's wife coming in? Like that part's such a weird part, isn't it? But I love her. She says books are great carriers, meaning like of spirits and things. And I was like, yeah, that's true. That's really cool. That's spot on. But like it's just this weird. She just comes like a bull in a china shop in kind of makes the pace change a little bit.
It's so funny you say that because like I don't dislike Eleanor, but I dislike her. So like Shirley Jackson does such a good job at being like, you're supposed to the reader, you're supposed to not like this woman and her associate by association, But it's interesting that she mentions the books in the library because they did find that weird like scrapbook that was written by the father, and the weirdness. Yeah, and the weirdness that was in that, and like the way he like put his own blood in the pages and stuff like that. And it's like, and I think shortly after that was put in the book, then the Mrs. Montague comes in and she does talk about things being passed on or carried or something like that with books. And I was wondering if Shirley Jackson is trying to make a point with that, like saying that maybe that is somewhat of a source in the house of the negativity. I'm not sure.
Oh, that's a good point. Speaking of books, I'm just curious what people's ideas are. A lot of people find this to be dated, to be sort of old fashioned, whereas I don't. Like, I feel like the book that Christina talked about with Hugh Carn writing for the daughter, and he's like signaling her virtue and her purity and stuff. I mean, that still happens in the United States today. We still have purity culture. I don't find Eleanor to be too old fashioned in what, with the exception of, she thinks it's scandalous that she brought slacks. That really dates it, you wouldn't think that today. But a lot of the other things I just found really just charming and it didn't take me out from the story.
No, I think this book is definitely not dated. In fact, it's I think it really reflects whatever time it's read in somehow in some interesting way, based on how it's read. There is, and I think it probably might resonate even more with us today because, it was the novel, Shirley Jackson's coming out of, post World War II, war about fascism. And when you have repressive societies, I mean, I think there's something in this that resonates when you have a repressive society. And, when you have people pushing certain agendas like today, I think this is going to resonate with us more and more. And yeah, I think I'm thinking about Mrs. Montague again coming in. Like, I think that's perfect. A bull in the china shop. And she is a terrible person. And as far as what's the origin here of the house? Because there's
wait, don't leave Mrs. Montague. I want to talk some more about that. Are you leaving that topic?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, no, don't forget where you were going. But wait a minute. I thought that when she comes in, that it made the point all the more of what they were in the middle of. You know what I mean? Like the fact that she came in and she was like, she knew what this meant and she knew exactly how to do it, but then none of it happened to her. And the fact that, like that to me made it creepier for the original four, because I think that sort of shone light on where they were in this adventure. And I think that to me was what made that device so powerful, was that she came in and she sort of blew everything up, but they still ended up trapped in it.
That is really interesting because I think shortly before she enters the story, they're like, what day of the week is it? Like, they're so, they
were lost in the house.
They're lost in the house and they're isolated too, to the point where they're like, they don't really have connections with the outside world. And you're right. She does come in and is like, all right, this is reality. This is the situation.
Yeah, it's like they're in COVID, Doug, if you want to talk about a different reading.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Reading on it, like we all felt when we were in isolation. We were like, what day is it? Who's out there? Well, finally when it lifted, we were like, wait, how do we go to the movies again? How do we go to a restaurant?
Oh my God, that's so true. I didn't think about that.
But I thought that was a really powerful choice. I thought it made it even scarier that she came in and tried to blow that up and it didn't. I don't know. I didn't like that character, obviously. And the fact that her assistant's like sitting there with the gun, I'm like, oh, this is not going to go well. Like it just made it. I had a lot of anxiety and I said, well, she's getting exactly what she wants out of me right now.
What do y'all think? If people argue that this book is dated, which I don't agree with, could it be that we're living in a time with, there's a proliferation of reality ghost shows, and that the idea of visiting a haunted space, like with a camera and making it, filming it in real time, with your EV, readers and things like that, could that affect how people read it now? That they are expecting, those kinds of, the things that are informing the ghost hunter show today. Could they be looking for that? And that, because that's not what the book is about.
There was a real lack of scientific method, I think. It was just like, let's sit around and drink some brandy and see what happens. Which, sounds good to me. But It could be that. I also, when I hear people say it's dated, I also think it's the writing style too, because it is very, I don't know what's the right way to say it. Like it's excessive in its description compared to what you would find is like trending
flowery?
today. Yeah. And it takes a while, you need a little bit of patience going in. You need to invest when you do start reading the book. And I would say the second half of the book is my favorite because that's where it really, in my opinion, really gets going. But yeah, I think you do have a point there, Doug, as far as like these, it's dated as in like, well, what exactly, they're there to investigate, but what exactly are they doing to investigate?
And this novel is in so many ways is a prototype of stories. People started modeling this in a lot of ways, and I wonder if people are so used to what's been modeled on the prototype. Like a few years later, Richard Matheson writes Hell House, which is a great book, but it is basically him saying, I'm going to write The Haunting of Hill House, and I'm going to put more sex in it and more violence and make it, gorier. And it's a fun book, but it doesn't have that psychological depth that this one does. There's not, you don't have this character like, Eleanor is the haunted house in so many ways. You don't have that kind of character. And I'm not knocking Richard Matheson's Hell House because it's a great book. But and then there's others. There's a recent book by I'm gonna blank on his name, Craig DeLuey, episode 13, which does some similar things as The Haunting of Hill House. And that was just written, I think, in the last year or two. It's like we're kind of used to what's been modeled on this blueprint. And then when you go back to the blueprint itself, it's like you're looking for, I guess, more bells and whistles.
Right. We're spoiled. Well, like she set the groundwork for so much of what a haunted house story should be and feels like. And yeah, when you build up from that, we're lucky enough to be at a point where that's, it does feel old fashioned because of that, because we've gone so far from it. But we have to remember that's where it,
I totally agree, so much groundwork. I feel like you guys have hit on something that really strikes a chord with me, because I feel like people are dismissive of a lot of things in our culture that were like the originals. And now they're like trite, whatever. And I wish that we had the capacity as a culture to like see things in context. Because I sort of read this knowing she invented a lot of this stuff. And that, that made a difference in how I approached it, as opposed to, is this a book that I would want to see on Netflix tomorrow? Exactly. You know what I mean? Like, so don't you guys think that there's sort of a loss of that around us? Like people often don't see things in context, and that always frustrates me.
Yeah, I think so. Another author, another woman author that did horror and thriller a lot, that like is Daphne I don't know how to say her last name.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rebecca, which is
yes.
Book. God,
yes, and I learned too that a lot of her work was Hitchcock was inspired by it. And Psycho, The Birds, like she was almost like his muse in a way, and that gets lost in the shuffle. But it's fascinating to me, and like you said, there's so much groundwork that's so good, but we just need a little patience and to go back and read it for what it is.
Tim, you need an episode on Rebecca, the Daphne du Maurier, which is another. It's not overtly a haunted house, but it may as well be.
Well, I just wrote it down. Don't worry. And see, that's one of my questions for you.
It's not gory. It's not. No, it's another one. There's not a lot of gore or anything.
Well, see, that's what I like. I don't like the gore. I like the suspense, the eerie part, like that. So I'll be all about it. I'll definitely be reading that. And Doug, one of my goals is to keep doing this and keep having these discussions with whoever, because I think I love books and I love talking about it. And this is. I love where we're going with this, but I am frustrated if people like I said, my husband sort of dismissed a lot of the things in the book. And I just think because he's seen it all so many times, and I kept wanting to go like, but wait a minute, like she made a lot of this stuff up. Like she created a lot of these that to me matters.
You
there's
have to think about the time when things were written too. I mean, I know when I would teach Gothic literature courses and when we would read The Monk, which was, so shocking for the time. It's even shocking today. The students were
oh
like,
yeah,
what the heck was that? But then when you tell them like what time period it came from, they're like, oh my God, they can't believe someone was writing about that back then. And the same thing with The Haunting of Hill House. You have to put it in that perspective and within that frame of what benchmark with what else was going on at the time. Yeah, Shirley Jackson is not going to have a lot of gore. She's not going to be splatterpunk. That just wasn't a thing.
And it
no,
also like just her, I just know a little bit about her, her own life, but I think that she kind of fought against the whole idea of being extremely ladylike for your time because that's the way things were. And so, that feeling of being trapped in whatever society, as a, society or your home life or whatever, it kind of comes out onto the page. It's almost like Yellow Wallpaper, that short story. It's just that feeling of being trapped. And of course, that to me is timeless. That goes across, any generation. But I think it really speaks to her time, especially.
it's probably dangerous to read anything too autobiographically, but there's her Shirley Jackson's biographers could make a case that she was projecting her own relationship to her mother onto Eleanor. Apparently, Shirley Jackson's relationship to her mother was very, very troubled and difficult. And then she was also living where she lived in I'm going to say, is it Vermont or New Hampshire?
I think it's Vermont, yeah.
Vermont. They lived in that small town, and she and her husband Stanley Hyman, and they were considered such outsiders there.
Mm-hmm.
And that sense of just not belonging, is something it's Eleanor again, trying to I just want a place that's home.
And then that's all of us too. That's why the book continues to resonate, because we've all been in situations where we felt othered and not belonging and wanting that sense of home and security. So it's so relatable.
It really is.
And a lot of Shirley Jackson's work kind of has that theme to it. We have always lived in the castle. I mean, the house and the way that the two sisters are treated. I just see a lot of similarities in there.
Really are, yeah. And even the novels that don't get celebrated as much, the Sundial and Hangsaman, you can see those threads all running through them.
And she's such a good, I don't know, she's so good at observing people and society around her. Like her short story, The Lottery. She's so good at like figuring out, well, why are we acting the way we're acting, and this mob mentality, and on any level and scale, and just how we function as a group of people. It's really, I think she was very much ahead of her time, it feels.
Yeah.
So when we come back to the Phantom History House, Tim, are we going to drink brandy and wait for ghosts are we going to replicate the experiment?
Well, I find myself being more of a whiskey guy these days, but I feel like the idea of sitting around having a drink and waiting, seeing what happens is, we're all about sort of getting away and turning off the world and having some quiet and peace and calmness. And maybe that makes opens you up to whatever else is out there. But absolutely, I'm all for it. I mean, I so enjoyed the book, and I so enjoyed being in the world with them and experiencing the creepiness with them. Like I just thought her writing was masterful. Doug, you started in on something about what is the house or whatever. Do you want to go there now?
Oh, I was just going to build on something Christina said. She brought the blood. Is this the start of it? And there's that line in the book about how the house is just born bad, and I love that it's just, and that's I know I can't think of who exactly, but I know that whole line that line has been used and paraphrased before by other writers. It's just that whole idea that the house is is alive, and it can just be a terrible, terrible individual. That I love that. I
So
don't
how
have
does
anything more profound than that.
wait, but how does that gel with Elaine's comment about the house, the haunting of the house, as opposed to the house being evil itself? That feels like you're being contradictory there. Which one is it?
I don't
Well,
know.
maybe it could be both, right?
Yeah.
The house could be bad, and Eleanor is kind of, drawn to that, and the house is drawn to her, and they're sort of, it's a toxic relationship. They're bringing out the worst in each other.
Yeah.
I
I like
think,
the ambiguity of the book. I like
yeah.
it doesn't give you, just lay out the answers for you.
Of
I was
course.
gonna say that there is so much fear in the unknown, and I think that this book is really good at doing that. Just like, the things that you don't see. So much of the book is the professor, or the doctor just saying, so these are the stories I know about the house. And he's just like planting seeds, and he's like, all right, go, good night now. Go, try not to have nightmares. And so I think that's the Shirley Jackson's way of like planting these seeds in her head, and just like, you may not see everything, you may not know all the reasons, but that's part of that's what fear is in a way. It's just not the not knowing.
I agree. And I think the book is a lot about fear, but there's a part of me that feels like these characters wanted the adrenaline rush of the fear. It felt like they wanted it.
I mean, they all showed up there specifically because they wanted to see if it was the house was haunted. I mean, that was the whole premise of their arriving, and they're the only ones who agreed to show up. So I think you're absolutely right about that. I do want to say one other thing. I felt like I can't remember her name, the character of the housekeeper.
Dudley, or Mrs. Dudley, was that it?
It was something that.
I thought that she was an incredibly smart addition to the story because, like, you know what I mean? Like, she was like the baseline, like, dinner is at 6. I'm gone at 7, whatever it was. Like, I do.
Oh, is he frozen?
It was very powerful.
Okay.
Do what?
You froze for a minute.
Did I freeze?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, it says my internet connection is unstable. Great. Okay. Well, let me make a note. Maybe I'll edit here. Anyway, my point was, I thought that the way that her being a character, sort of setting this baseline for like the people that know, we know the house, dinner's at 6. I don't come back at night. Like that sort of monotone reaction to the being in the house, I thought was really powerful addition to the story, because they laughed at it the whole time until the end. But I just thought that was that, and the fact that the kitchen had so many doors. Also, that still bothers me to this day. Like there were like all these doors going off on all these angles, and like that also freaked me out.
Yeah, I think that the rules. Oh, I'm sorry.
You guys.
I was gonna say that I think that the rules, because they know the house and maybe that it's unreliable. They needed to have the rules to have some sense of normalcy. Because if things are closing, if things are being moved and misplaced, and there's unexplainable stuff happening all around you, if I say dinner's at 6 and I'm putting down the plates at this time and I'm picking them back up in the morning when I come back in, I think that saves their sanity, if they're going to have to deal with that house as a whole.
And the house is fighting that, that sense of rigid rules. The house doesn't want that. Or does it? I don't know. I love what you're saying, though.
I just thought it was a really
house
smart.
Wants the rules, but I think those character, the like housekeeper, groundskeeper, those are just stock characters for Gothic literature. They always appear. But I just loved her, and that how she would keep reminding everybody, and if you scream, we won't hear you. Like, I just love that. That was so good.
Yeah, I just thought it was really powerful. Well, like, I just think this whole thing is just so smart. Like as I was reading, I just kept going, well, that was a smart choice. And, that the way it happened. Oh, and of course, the thing where she wakes up and she's holding somebody's hand, but then.
Yes.
Like, was that not the most terrifying?
I love that scene so much.
But I mean, so let me ask you guys this then. Like, I really thought this was scary. And I feel like, again, people are sort of being very dismissive. And I'm like, well, I mean, maybe it's because I haven't read a lot of horror literature, or maybe I I really thought it was scary. Like, the fact that everybody's saying it's dated, it's tried, whatever, it wasn't to me. Like, I was all in and I was really scared. There were a couple of nights I was reading late at night and Steve wasn't here, and I got a little wigged out. And I thought, this is a great book. You know what I mean? Like, she has completely accomplished for me, I think, what she wanted. And that's why I was so impressed.
You're not going to get the rattling chains in this book. And I mean, obviously whether or not a book is scary is subjective. And I'm not often scared by what I read, but I find moments of this just so utterly creepy and just perfectly creepy. So I agree with you. I think it's a masterclass in how to just use mood and suggestion and ambiguity. To me, that's ultimately that's how you creep me out.
I found that because we're relying on Eleanor so much, that just added so much creepiness to the story, especially like, in the second half of the book, where she's turned into such a hateful person towards Theodore, who was like her BFF at the beginning. And then there's like this one sentence or something where, Theodore is trying to talk to her, and Eleanor's responding in like a really nice way. But the whole time she's thinking, oh, I want to like do violent things to you, like really awful imagery. But she's smiling and nodding along as if like, yeah, we're still friends and I still love you. And it's like, what? What is happening here? Like, it's so creepy to me.
See, that's when I read a little bit of maybe biographical Shirley Jackson. I get the sense that Shirley Jackson was not a big fan of people, even though, she had to be. But because when we always lived in the castle, it's the same thing. Mary Cat's walking around imagining like stomping over people's burnt bodies and stuff, but just like la-di-da-di-da. And I sort of feel like that is going back to that idea of like, well, I don't belong. Because I don't belong, I hate you. I don't want to be you. I want to hate you instead.
Yeah. And then just watching Eleanor's gradual madness, where she's just like, what am I thinking? What am I doing? Why am I here? Why am I acting like this? I don't know. It's just, there's something about it that really like gets to me.
It's always what's seething beneath the surface in Shirley Jackson. That's where the magic is, like the lottery, the normal town does this once a year. And yeah, but
don't you think all of us sort of think that? I think that's like in the back of our minds. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, we all kind of think, is there something wrong with me? I've stood in the grocery store line before thinking about wanting to hit somebody over the head with my frozen pork loin, So, okay, I'm not admitting that on tape. I'm going to edit this out. But
I was going to say, I'm not going shopping with you.
I don't know. I just feel like a lot of what she was writing, it just seemed like, I know somebody like that, or I've thought like that before, or I can see how if I was in this situation, I would react like that. Like it just all seemed to make sense to me. And I think that's what made it scarier.
Weirdly to me, I see the ending almost as like a happy ending for Eleanor. Yeah. Because she is really struggling with identity. When she's no longer her mother's caretaker, who is she? When she's in Hill House, the issue is she Eleanor? Is she Nellie? Is she Nell? They keep using different names. They give Theo her clothes. And when Theo's in her clothes, Theo says, I'm Eleanor now. And it's like, and Eleanor's saying, like, who am I? Where do I belong? Where's home? Who am I? Finally, at the end, she has a home. And she will be talked about now. She will have those experiences. She's no longer just the person who lives in the baby's room. She's now going to be this specter that looms over the house.
Yeah, the one thing that she didn't want at the beginning was to be the center of attention, which is so ironic.
So she said, Christina. Remember, we can't really trust Eleanor very much.
She seemed to enjoy it a lot later.
I'm inclined to agree with you, Elaine, except the ending, the last line, within its walls continued upright, bricks met neatly, floors were firm, and doors were sensibly shut. Silence lay steadily against the wood and stone of Hill House, and whatever walked there walked alone. That is the loneliest sentence ever. Walked alone. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's doomed for loneliness, because that's of course her. She's gonna walk that house.
Also, right before, she crashes into the tree, she gets that bit of clarity and she's like, why is no one stopping me?
Why am I doing this?
Yeah. And so that just like freaked me out, because I'm like, oh God, she doesn't know what she's doing still, and look how it's going to end. It's awful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the scariest part of the book, is that just that last moment where she does wonder what she's doing.
It's like she got trapped again without her wanting fully, like understanding fully what's happening. But yeah, it's, I don't know. I don't know if I think it's a happy ending.
But it can be. That's the ambiguity, though. It could be read either way, and it can be both, like Elaine said before about, it can be this both at the same time. And that's hard to pull off when you're writing a novel.
Yeah, I love
Do
it.
you think publishers today would let you pull that off?
Oh,
that kind of ambiguity.
Gotta pick one. Which is it?
Really? Oh,
I think my instinct is editors and publishers I've worked with to be like, can we really clear up that ending?
No. No, we can't.
the whole fun of it. Wow. Well, I think we need to wrap this up, because you guys have been so kind with your time.
Read The Haunting of Hill House. And I agree. We've always lived at the castle, as Christina and Elaine have said, would be a great follow-up if you like this book. It's
great. That's one of the things I wanted to know. And I'm going to read Rebecca apparently as well. So I made a lot of notes of things you guys mentioned. Elaine, anything you want to say?
I want to say I love talking about books. I love talking to you. Feel free to invite me back to talk about any one of those books. I could go on and on and on.
I love it. I love it. Christina, thank you for being here. Anything you want to say as we're closing?
Oh yeah, this was so much fun. And I love Shirley Jackson. I love horror literature. So yeah, if you'd love to continue this conversation or talk about another work, I'm all in. And yeah, this was a lot of fun.
Well, I can tell you, I'm going to keep reading these now, and my interest is piqued, and I love the idea of having conversations as well. So I will probably take you all up on that. No worries about it. Doug, thank you for putting this together.
Oh, thank you.